standing inside the small room looking at Peter directly in front of them. Fex couldn't believe it. They had successfully managed to make their way to Peter's room with no trouble at all. This type of thing could have only been done with extensive research, and Fex looked at Logan in even more amazement now. For Logan, his plan turned out better than he thought. Everything was easier than it would have been anywhere else, and the reason was that the military had kept to the same routine down to the last second. There were a few variables that Logan had planned out for, but expected that he might not have needed them. When walking through certain hallways and through the rooms, everything had turned out as he had expected. Still, he had kept his spiders out to watch just in case. If they had made any changes to their routine, the spiders would have been able to see and inform him beforehand. There was only one tricky part of the whole operation, and that was due to the room Peter was in. To keep an eye on Peter, he had been placed in a separate section compared to everyone else, a room made just for him that was void with contact to the outside. On top of this, 2 guards were to be stationed by the door. This was better for both Fex and Quinn. The military had expected an attack from the outside. The easiest time to attack would be during the event when the soldiers were busy and spread thin. If they caused a panic, they would be too busy dealing with the public than dealing with the attack. They were confident in their measures and never expected someone from the inside to do anything. Their main concern was with others, or the students seeing them, so this was better for them altogether. The 2 guards who were stationed at the front door were where Fex would come into play. The 2 of them stood just around the corner from Peter's room silently as they waited for the answer from above. As soon as Vorden had successfully knocked out Quinn, they would act. If not, they would turn around and abandon the whole thing. They needed to wait because the only thing they could do at this point was to knock out the 2 guards in front of them and take Peter away. Logan had timed everything, so the shift change had just happened. No one would find their beaten bodies for another hour, which meant they needed to take Peter to Silver within the time frame. Then a message had been received from above. "He did it, and a lot quicker than I thought," Logan said, surprised. From around the corner of the corridor, 2 spiders were released once again. They scaled up the wall and went above the ceiling. They walked until they were just above the 2 soldiers' heads. "You ready?" Logan asked as he could see Fex was fiddling with a string in his hand. This string was different from the usual type he would use. When Fex used his abilities before, it would always be nearly invisible to the eye, but this string was dyed red like blood. The ability had been infused with his vampire blood abilities to make it several times stronger. The only problem was it took some preparation time to use. This was why he was unable to use it against the King-tier beast before. At the same time, he had already deemed it would be useless because the King-tier beast was far too strong. Still, for situations like this, it was perfect. When Fex was finally ready, he gave the nod, and at the same time, the spiders fell hovering above the neck of the guards. Both of them felt something ticklish on their neck. One soldier tried slapping it, while another turned around trying to fling whatever was on him. This small distraction was all that was needed for Fex to whip out his blood-red strings. Quickly, they wrapped around their mouths like a spiderweb, before wrapping around their legs and pulling them to the ground. Then finally, their whole arms and legs had been covered. They tried to break free from the strings, but it was nearly impossible for them. The spiders continued to move along their body as they scanned for any traces of equipment that could give them away. The only thing that was found was a tracker that had been placed along with an alert button. However, the alert hadn't been pressed, so it was best to leave everything as it was for now. The 2 of them entered the room, and they could see Peter standing there still. He had heard the commotion outside and was wondering what was going on, but he had never expected to see these 2. Peter had already given up hope of being saved. "I never expected you to save me," Peter said. "Don't thank us yet, until you hear what we have to say, and it's not good news," Fex replied. Back above ground, Vorden had now switched back with Syl. He had sent a report to the others to proceed with what they were doing. He hadn't extracted the blood yet, as Fex had given him a warning, and they needed to wait for the timing. He knew that Quinn was currently going through getting rid of his addiction. Fex never knew about the connection Vorden had, and never expected him to be able to get such powerful abilities. He had hoped with Quinn going through the addiction, he would be weak enough to the point where it was easier for him to be knocked out, and it seemed like it had worked. There were many times when Vorden had watched Quinn. He appeared to have been given 2 or 3 chances, as if he had more lives than one, but this time that hadn't happened. However, this also meant there was a chance that during the fight, Quinn would be close to turning into a bloodsucker. He had been informed that there should be a flask similar on Quinn's body. Vorden searched and found a replica. The next step was to wait patiently for the others to get back to him, or until there were signs that Quinn was starting to change. "We have successfully gotten Peter. We're coming up now," Logan said. Everything seemed to have fallen into place. Layla had entered the room and was now standing by Quinn's side, both of them looking at Quinn's body. "How do you think he will react when he wakes up?" Layla asked. "I think he'll be pissed, but he will understand. He will soon realize if he was in our shoes, he would have done the same thing," Vorden replied, as he pulled out a small little dagger and proceeded to cut Quinn on the arm. Blood started seeping from the wound and fell into the flask. "Do you think this is right? Aren't we just sacrificing one life for another?" Layla asked. "Don't forget, Peter had already been caught by the military. There was nothing we could do. This solves both our problems. They never find out about the vampires, and for a short while, it will get the vampires off our back. 0 of 95 HP. Bloodlust is at its maximum. You are now transforming." The standard messages would appear, even though Quinn wasn't conscious. Suddenly, as the flask was filled, Quinn's body started to jolt up and down as it began to shake. Vorden knew what this was straight away. He quickly handed over the flask with Quinn's blood to Layla. He then grabbed the other flask that was on Quinn's body. He held his mouth open with one hand while pouring it all in with the other. A few moments later, the shaking had stopped. The veins and muscles that were bulging had calmed down, and it looked like everything was safe for now. "Multiple blood types have been consumed. Calculating stat increases." "Here, take this as well," Vorden said, handing over the second flask. "Fex said for Quinn to keep it, but I'm afraid it might only bring us more trouble in the future. Give it back to him." "Don't worry about me and just go," Vorden shouted. Before leaving, she took one look at Quinn. There was a good chance that his current life now would be hers. Always running away, but still. At least Quinn isn't following anyone. He chose to do things his way. With that, she ran off out of the building. "Don't wake up, Quinn," Vorden said. "It's for your own good." Outside, the two boys had returned with Peter. They had given him one of the masks to wear for now, in case the other students outside would see him. Although it was pretty late now, nearly all of the students had already returned to their rooms. Layla came running out towards them as they met on the platform a little away from Military Hotel 2. She could see the three boys in their masks, and she had to admit it looked a little intimidating. The masks had a scary look to them in their designs and made them all appear like demons. "Do you have the blood?" Fex asked. "It's right here," Layla said, handing over the flask. She then quickly pulled out the second one and handed it to him as well. "Vorden said he knows you mean well, but there is a chance others could come looking for it." Fex wanted to say no. He wanted Quinn to at least have something to remember him by when he left. This was a gift, but at the same time, he would be selfish otherwise if he insisted. It was true, if humans found the flask, there was a good chance he would be investigated. He took the two flasks and then grabbed Peter by the arm. "Tell Quinn he doesn't have to worry about the vampires. There are no vampires stationed at Military Base 2, nor are there any at the other military bases now. Once I leave with Peter, he will have nothing to worry about for a good while. I don't have the time to say goodbye to you all, and neither does Peter. I wish you all good luck in the future," Fex said, as he grabbed Peter and took off into the distance. A cloud of mist seemed to encase the two of them, and when the mist had settled, they no longer could be seen. Layla and Logan didn't even have the chance to even say their final words. "You know, when Fex first came, I kind of hated him, especially with everything he did to Aaron," Layla said. "But he was never a bad guy. I'm going to miss that idiot." "It will certainly feel weird without him and my assistant. Good luck to you two as well," Logan said. Before they had left Peter's room, both Fex and Vorden had updated Peter on the whole situation. They informed him of the plan and the troubles that came with it. Without hesitation, after being told what needed to be done, Peter had agreed. After hearing this was all for Quinn's sake, he was happy he would be of some help to his creator and savior. However, the sudden response seemed strange, Fex thought. Sure, Wights were loyal to their creators, but not like this one. One would have to command order and be forced to do so due to the bond of blood, but Peter seemed to have been so accepting over the whole thing. "I can't guarantee what will happen to you when they find out," Fex said. "You could be killed." The words spoken were trying to deter him. "It's okay," Peter replied. "Better than being left in the hands of the humans. Besides, if I stayed, there is a good chance they would find out about all of you, and I wouldn't want anything to happen." Hearing these words had put a smile on Vorden's face. "Peter, you did change for the better, and I don't think it's just because you're a Wight now," said Vorden. "When you first evolved, you seemed cruel and distant, but those words right there, they didn't come from the Wight version of you or the old Peter. Right now I see a new man." Hearing Vorden's words just confirmed Fex's strange thoughts further. Wights were relatively short-tempered and evil. Sure, Peter had shown this a few times, but it wasn't to the degree of Wights that he knew. Perhaps this was the influence of Quinn's will on the Creator. It was a shame, as it seemed to be progressing slowly. Peter started to change away from the standard Wight. "Let's go," Fex said. After parting ways from the others, Peter was taken to a safe, secluded place out on the platform, away from the meeting point with Silver, as well as away from the others. The masks were now returned, and right now, Peter had transformed his face to look like Quinn. If anyone were to see the two of them, they would just think they were nothing more than two students laughing. There was no chance for someone else to spot Quinn either, as Vorden was keeping an eye on him in the special training room. "Do you hate me?" Fex asked. "No," Peter replied instantly, but gave nothing more back. "I hate me," Fex said. "You know, I thought I might get attached to this place and hate to go back home. What I didn't expect was that I would get attached to the people rather than the place. I can't help but think that they all had to go through this just because of my selfish wants." "The vampires would have come for Quinn anyway," Peter replied. "What do you mean by that?" Fex asked. There was no reason to send any of the vampires to the military base. They had only come out to search for him. Peter hadn't replied because he didn't know why the vampires would come after Quinn. All he knew was before, Quinn would often say that it seemed like, for some reason, he was trying to get stronger as fast as possible, as if he was preparing for a threat ahead. "Oh, I think I know," Fex said, giving his answer and coming to his conclusion as usual. It had to be something to do with the shadow powers. There was a good chance that Quinn's master was part of the old Punishers, if they were still around. If the others knew about this, they certainly would send people after him. Even if Quinn's master wasn't a Punisher, the others would want to get their hands on Quinn's power for themselves and find out which family was in charge of Quinn. I never did find out the truth behind him. Fex at first was very curious, but soon felt bad about trying to find details of what he would now call a friend back. It just felt wrong, and it wasn't in his nature to do things like that. "Here, take this," Fex said, as he handed the flask over to Peter. After opening the lid, Peter gulped down the whole drink in one go, and suddenly had a strange feeling in his chest. It was something he hadn't felt in a while, and it was all a little alien to him. "The sound! My heart! It's beating again!" As the blood fell down his throat and reached his heart, strange energy surged through his body. The blood was now being pumped from the heart all over the body. He could feel it moving through his veins. It felt as if his insides were on fire. For anyone else, it would be a painful experience, but for Peter, it was a joy, since it was the first time he had felt pain in a while. "What is this?" Peter asked. "It's your master's blood. Usually there would be no reason to do this to a Wight. Their strengths are the fact that they can't feel pain. If anything, this makes you seem more human. Anyway, don't be too happy. The effects are temporary," Fex explained. "Our powers come from our blood, and right now, Quinn's power is inside you. Right now, the feeling, the smell, and even the look. With all this, I wouldn't be able to tell who I was looking at. As in terms of power, although your attacks and such will be healthy, you still can't produce any blood attacks like we are. Also, I would urge you not to fight or test out any of your powers. At most, I see this lasting a week. Day by day, the power will slowly start to fade, and sooner or later, they will find out. If you start using that extra strength of yours, it will only go away quicker." Fex then took a deep breath as he started to walk off to one of the military bases. "Leave all the talking to me." Once again, Silver was waiting patiently on top of the roof of Building 4. In her hand was a rectangular-looking device that looked identical to the one in Logan's room. It was a portable teleporter. She had trusted that her brother would complete the task, although he was a fool. He wasn't one to break promises. When he said he would finish it, she already knew he would get it done. "You're here," she said, as two figures jumped up from the side. "Oh," Silver replied, seeing that the person she had brought with them was still fully conscious. "As you requested, this is the vampire who had made it illegal. I had been tailing him a while and explained everything had happened. When I told him that a vampire knight was here to catch him, he immediately turned himself in, knowing there was no need to fight." A vampire knight, a class that was designated just below the vampire leader. It was a unique role, as each family was able to designate only 2 vampires in their family. They would mostly be in charge of running things or giving orders if the vampire leader wasn't present. Because of this, to be able to be elected into such a position, one would need a strong power to keep the others in the line. Seeing the beautiful woman in front of him, Peter felt nothing, yet for some reason, that seemed to worry him even more. When he had first encountered Fex, his wild energy could be felt throughout. One could tell he was strong. But with Silver it was calm. It was as if she wasn't even there, yet clearly she stood right in front of him. "And what of the illegal?" she asked. "I have taken care of him and gotten rid of the body, but since he and this one are registered students, they will soon find out about them. I suggest we leave as soon as possible." Silver walked over to Fex slowly. The sound of her boots hitting the floor was heard. Everything had been prepared for this moment, and he had answered perfectly. Now he just needed her to believe him. However, he was too afraid and didn't want to look up for even a second. Suddenly he felt a hand on his hair. Silver ruffled it up and gave it a little pat. "You have done well, little brother. I will tell the family of your good deeds here, and they shall lighten the punishment." The square portal device was placed on the ground, and a unique digital number was imputed. The contraption started to open itself up, slowly piece by piece, until it had finally connected. Fex quickly tied up Peter's hand behind his back with his string ability and pulled him along. "Goodbye, everyone," he said in his head as he stepped through the portal, with Peter following behind. Soon after, Silver threw a small circular ball on the floor and stepped through herself. The small circular ball started to blink red and made a beeping sound. The blinking, along with the sound, started to get faster until the ball had exploded, destroying everything in a 2-meter radius, including the portal. No one would be able to follow their traces to the vampire's home. Slowly, it seemed like Quinn was waking up. A few grunts were heard here and there as he started to lift himself off the floor. His insides were hurting, which was a strange feeling, but his body was mostly healed from the attack. When he had opened his eyes, he was greeted with several messages that had appeared while he was knocked out. 50 of 95 HP, hunger has diminished, transformation has been cancelled, multiple blood types consumed, stat points allocated, 4 free stat points remaining. Quinn quickly tried to get his head around what the messages had meant and tried to remember his last moments. Suddenly, he started to remember he was in the middle of a fight, and it was with Vorden. It hadn't lasted for long. The only thing he could guess was that he had been knocked. Transformation cancelled. I see it's all starting to make sense now. I must have been knocked out in the middle of the fight. I was low on HP in the first place and started to transform. The stat increase and the HP regained must have been from the blood in the flask. When Quinn found out he was getting addicted, he decided to stop consuming blood daily. However, he soon realized that it didn't mean he had to stop collecting blood from different students. After placing one of the students' blood in the flask, he later collected other students' blood and placed it into the container. When his HP was low enough, he would consume the flask with all the blood in it, giving him a boost in stats as well as helping him get rid of his addiction. Status, stats, strength 26, agility 27, stamina 21, charm 28. He had also obtained 4 more free stat points to be used whenever he wished. I'll continue to place it into charm for now, he thought. The reason for this was no student's blood type would directly increase the charm stat like the others. On top of this, currently, he knew of and had found no equipment that did such a thing either, while all the other stats still had the benefit of higher-tier equipment. His plan had significantly worked. As long as he had the flask, he could continue to do this without addiction to blood. He reached around his side and went to grab the flask. Right now he felt so overjoyed that he wanted to grab it and kiss it. Huh? Where's the flask? Quinn thought, as he panicky started to grab around his waist, but could find nothing. So you're finally awake, Vorden said, making sure that he was a few feet away. He didn't know how Quinn would react to the whole thing, and made sure to keep his distance. Hearing the voice made Quinn spring up to his feet, and instantly he got into a fighting stance. Shadowy Quinn, wait, it's me. I was the one that gave you the blood, Quinn, calm down. What's your name? Quinn asked. I'm Vorden, it's me, Quinn. Remember we went to the red portal planet together, and you turned into that bloodsucker? If you want proof, I can even go into detail about how you ate— Stop, I believe you, Quinn said, not wanting Vorden to remind him of what had happened back then. What happened to you, Vorden? Was it you that attacked me? Was it pure? What's going on? Quinn asked. Do you remember a while ago when I said if there were some things you found out about me, I would have to kill you? Vorden replied. At the time, it probably seemed like a joke, but I was quite serious. There are some secrets that I have, Quinn, but that's not important right now. What do you mean it's not important right now? Quinn shouted back. You or Syl or whoever it was just fried my arse. There's something you need to know. It's about Peter and Fex. I promise I'll explain everything. The trust between the two of them had been partially broken, and Vorden could see that. So he made sure to stay a few feet away from Quinn while explaining the details of what had happened and why. What Fex's part in all of this was and what his part of it was as well. Once he explained everything, there was silence between the two of them. Vorden had been prepared for a telling off, a scolding, or even sadness, but there was no reaction at all. After a few moments, Quinn started to walk towards him with his head down. Seeing this, Vorden gulped and moved to the side out of the way. However, Quinn continued to move forward until he eventually reached the door. Quinn, aren't you going to say anything? Vorden asked. He just couldn't stand the silence anymore. I'm disappointed, in not just you, Vorden, but everyone. Since when could you not trust me to make my own decisions? Even worse, when did you guys start making the decisions for me? Looking around the room, Quinn lifted his hand and swung his fist into the door as hard as he could. Open the door, he shouted, as he slammed his fist into the metal door again. It was sturdy since it was made out of glathrium, and even the strongest people could not do anything to the door. Quinn lifted his hand and proceeded to punch it again. This time the skin from his knuckles ripped, and there was a bloody fist mark left on the door. 49 of 95 HP. Seeing this, Vorden hurried over and entered the code at the side, allowing the doors to open. As soon as they did, Quinn continued to storm off and away. Wait, Quinn, where are you going? You're not going to try to do anything, are you? They're already gone, Vorden said, afraid that he might go looking for them, which was pointless. I know, said Quinn. I can no longer feel Peter's presence. It's too far away. I just want to be alone for a bit. Sometimes one needed space and time to heal. Vorden knew this better than most, and decided to let him go for now until he had calmed down. Quinn continued to walk around the large platform in a circle. As he went by, he looked and went past each of the military hotels. He was thinking about everything that had happened until he had eventually stopped and started to look over the ledge down into the arena floor. I can't blame them. They did what they thought was best for me and Peter. Who knows what would have happened to him? The only person I can blame for being in the situation I'm in is myself. I'm just too weak. Too weak to help Peter, too weak for Fex to even rely on me. And Fex, at first I didn't trust him, but it seemed like he did keep his word till the end. He didn't give me up to the vampires, and everything he did was to protect me. System, do you know what will happen to Fex and Peter once they find out Peter's real identity? Quinn asked. Honestly, I'm not too sure. It seems like a lot of time has passed, and as the world changes, so do the rules. Although vampires usually stay relatively close to tradition. A trial will be placed where the council shall decide their fate. If you want me to be really honest with you, they will kill Peter. They will assume he is something called an illegal, since he won't be in their files. What they don't know is that Peter is not illegal. What do you mean by that? Fex said that a vampire that wasn't created by one of the 13 leaders, or at least didn't have their permission, would be considered an illegal, correct? Yes, but don't you remember when you created your own family? Peter is part of the cursed family. Do you also remember when I told you to keep this a secret from other vampires no matter what? Well, I suppose it's time it told you the truth. Quinn, when you created that family, you became one of the 13 leaders. Your family name has taken over the missing 10th seat, the system explained. Wait, does that mean if I tell them who I am, about the family, then Peter will live and Fex won't get in trouble? Quinn asked. No, the system replied instantly. Think about it. Why do you think the 10th family seat was empty in the first place? I can't stop your destined fate in the future, Quinn, but I can delay it. You inform them of who you are now, and you will become a target in an instant. Then explain to me. Explain what happened, Quinn shouted in his mind. Could you explain to me who you are? And explain to me what happened to the 10th family? And don't give me this crap that you can't tell me. Quinn already had some ideas and guesses of his own who the system was, as slowly everything was starting to be revealed. However, there was no point in overthinking it until he could confirm his guesses. I am afraid I cannot tell. You're useless, Quinn said, as he continued to storm off back to his hotel room. Inside the Military Base 1 hotel, on one of the top floors, an urgent knock was heard at one of the Big Four's doors. Sir, please answer immediately. We have a report from Duke, a man said, desperately trying to get into the room. Jack immediately answered the door after hearing Duke's name. If it was something in the middle of the night, it couldn't have been good news. What is it? Jack asked. It's about the student Peter. He's missing. Inside an elegant large room with a modern-looking design, Jack was sitting there, patiently tapping away at a desk in the corner. Standing by his side were two reasonably large guards. He always had someone by his side no matter what, due to his unique situation. He wasn't like the other Big Four family members, for they believed in their strength. He knew the others looked down on him because of this, but he didn't care. The two guards who stood by his side weren't the same pair as the time when he had visited the military base. After their mistakes, he decided to give them another role and replace them. Jack very rarely gives people second chances. If one was to mess up, he could always take their power away before giving it to another. The tapping continued, and the guards were now looking at Jack out of the corner of their eye as it seemed to be getting louder and louder. He shouted as he slammed his fist on the desk. It has to be pure. Once again, they got the upper hand and managed to get rid of him somehow, and there isn't much I can do, Jack said. For this one, Jack was on his own. He hadn't informed Oscar or any of the other military personnel about Peter, how he was most likely a suspect of pure. This was because he wanted to do everything himself. The only person who had been helping him along the way was General Duke. Duke was always the one who assigned two guards to be kept on Peter and decided who he would go up against and the ref while the others knew nothing. He couldn't ask for their help, and he couldn't start turning this place upside down, trying to look for an insider. Otherwise, they would find out. They would then question Jack's motives and put all the blame on him. Although he was in a position where it wouldn't be too much of a problem, he still just didn't want to deal with it. The others didn't like him in the first place. He knew that the other three regretted ever inviting him into the Big Four. The only reason why he was able to stay in his position of power was due to his great relationship with the military and Oscar. There was a good chance what he had tried to do would sour that relationship, and the others would use this opportunity to break it. The worst part about this whole mess was that now he had to make sure the others and the military wouldn't find out about it. He was the one that now needed to cover up his tracks. It was decided. A report was sent out to Duke with further instructions. Peter would no longer be taking part in the tournament due to an emergency matter. What emergency matter, he would let him decide. When they returned to the military base, he would let Duke handle the rest. The disappearance of one student shouldn't be too hard to do in his position. An attempted runaway? There were many different options they could put Peter's disappearance as. Pure, I promise if I ever find out where your base is, I'll send my whole army after you and crush you, he said, squeezing his fist tightly. The next day had arrived, and it was now morning. The events were not set for some time yet, and the main events were later. That's why Quinn found it very odd when he had a knock, bright early in the morning. Before even opening the door, though, he knew who it was. He paused for a second and then braced himself before opening it. Vorden, why are you here so early? The events don't start later, Quinn said, trying to make things seem familiar between them, but it was clear that it wasn't. Am I allowed in? Vorden asked. Come on, don't be like that. Please. The more you act differently, the more you will remind me of the crap you pulled, Quinn said. Once inside the room, Vorden walked and headed for the outside window. The bright light beamed on his golden hair and handsome face. Looking at him now, the sadness in his eyes made him look like an abandoned prince. I wanted to tell you about yesterday before you go asking. You're right, it's not fair that I keep all my secrets while I know all of yours. Quinn himself was now feeling a little guilty since he hadn't told the others everything, but it wasn't like it was a big deal to explain to them how his powers worked, how it was a game like a system. Even if he did tell them, it wouldn't have changed anything. How much do you remember before you were knocked out? Vorden asked. You mean when you were screaming that your name wasn't Vorden and you were Syl? Or when you nearly roasted me like a chicken before, then zapping me," Quinn replied. "Well, it looks like you remember everything then," said Vorden. "Like I said, yesterday that was me. There was no mind control or anything. Syl and I are the same." "Vorden, you're going to have to be clearer than that." "I really can't go into details, but have you ever heard of did?" Quinn paused for a second as he thought about it. The strange actions, the fluctuation in voice, it indeed was like he was a different person. Suddenly a memory came back to him. There was one time he had met Syl before, when he was being questioned. Quinn always wondered how Vorden had gotten away with the lying test back then. He thought he had borrowed a mind swap ability at the time, but what if that wasn't the case at all? "You mean you have split personalities?" Quinn said, shocked. He had heard of things like this before, but had never seen anything like this in person. He also never realized how separate these personalities were. He always thought if he was to meet someone with did, it would be similar to a person who had mood swings. But the way Vorden had acted was almost like two people were living inside one body. "I can't go into many details about how or why, not yet anyway, but I will tell you one thing. I can copy only one ability. In comparison, the other one can copy 3. That's why I needed to switch with him yesterday when fighting you," Vorden explained. Purposely, Vorden avoided telling Quinn about Rayton. Having to tell someone this was hard enough, and he wasn't able to go into details about the whole thing anyway. So for now, he would keep it as simple as possible. "Vorden, why didn't you tell us this? I told you about me being a vampire, right? If you told me, or even the others, we would have understood. Do you know why I'm telling you this, Quinn? Because I want to regain your trust. You trusted me, and now I'm trusting you." Vorden then held out his hand. When looking at it, it reminded Quinn of the first day the two of them had met. He was the only one that reached out to him. Ever since then, the two of them had been through all out. Then he remembered something else. The 3 of them had gone through a lot. There was also Peter. "I trust you, Vorden," Quinn said, shaking his hand. "But that doesn't mean I don't think you make stupid decisions. So do I get to meet this guy at some point? Maybe we can be friends?" Vorden laughed, but chose not to say anything back. If Syl had heard this, he would have been running out from his corner and had taken over the seat in an instant. When he approached Quinn back then, when they had first met, he did so because he was a level 1. Often low levels looked at the world differently due to how they were treated, but after Syl had gained an interest, it meant now his life would revolve around Quinn. However, Vorden was happy that Syl had taken an interest in Quinn. He felt like the two of them were no real friends. "I also came here for something else as well," said Vorden. "I was hoping to come here before they did, and it looks like I beat them." "They?" Quinn replied, slightly confused. "Did you forget? Now that Peter isn't there, that means the substitute will have to take his place. They should be here soon to take you underground," Vorden explained. "Oh, I completely forgot about it. I never thought this would even happen. Oh well," he said, shrugging his shoulders. "I guess I'll just lose the match." "Do you want to do that, Quinn?" "What do you mean? I have to." "I'm asking you again. Do you want to lose the match?" Of course, Quinn didn't. For the longest time, ever since he had gotten his powers, he wanted to show all those people who thought he was weak, all those people that bullied him, what he could do. And more than ever, he tried to beat whatever net True Dream had set up for Quinn. All this mess in the first place was because of him and his sick ways. "We can fight," said Vorden. "On the Red Portal planet we came up with a plan, remember? If they discover your powers, then I would tell them that my family was backing you. We can use that today." Before Fex left, he said something. He told us that he and the one who came to get him were the only vampires on the military bases, that there were no others. At the time, I was wondering why he needed to tell us that. It is always better to be careful just in case, right? But I think he knew what was going to happen once Peter was taken. He was telling you to go crazy, not to worry. With Vorden using his original family name, they would no longer be after Quinn for the ability book. They would assume it was with Vorden's family. The other problem was the vampires. Even if they weren't here, there was always the chance they would find out about him. But did that matter anymore? It was only a matter of time before they found out about Peter, which would eventually lead them back to Quinn. "If you're ready," said Vorden, "then I am as well." "I don't want to hide anymore," Quinn replied. Before leaving Quinn on his own, Vorden had a few last words to say to him. Hearing these words, he knew what to do and was confident. Right after Vorden had left, he was on his own in his room. His heart, although beating slowly, was beating loud and strong. A new rising energy was felt surging through his whole body. "I wonder why I'm so excited." While being left on his own, he had time to reflect on everything and everyone that he had met so far. After finding that book and coming to the military school, he had a crazy journey he had never expected. More than anything, he didn't think there would be others who would join him along the way. A genius hacker, a terrorist or double agent, a vampire and an undead. Then you have the Ice Queen, and finally, the only one who I thought was normal turns out to have a split personality, Quinn thought. I guess these were the only friends I could make. What they say is true. Crazy people attract other crazy people. Yesterday night, while on his walk, Quinn had regained all of his health points. As long as he wasn't hungry and needed blood, his body would naturally regenerate on its own. But if it did, it would also make it so he was hungrier sooner. This made it hard for him to tell how practical the single session of restraining himself was. From the way Fex described it, as long as he wasn't drinking blood daily, it shouldn't cause much change. He didn't know how much he managed to wear off the blood addiction, but from now on, he knew he had to be careful. With no blood flask, it would be a while until he could start consuming the blood of students again. Then suddenly a thought came to his head. He quickly opened up the system shop and continued to scroll through the options. "That's it, there it is," Quinn said. The flask had been in the shop all along. At the time, he never thought such a thing would have been useful since he had the blood bank and Layla, but now it seemed like a handy item indeed. But looking at the ingredients needed, he was quickly disappointed. They were 2 intermediate-level beasts as well as an advanced tier one. For such a small item, it needed quite a few things. The problem was that they weren't items commonly found in the marketplace. Quinn would either have to hunt for it himself, which was near impossible, or hire someone else to get it for him. However, now that he knew it was possible to make one of his own, he would keep it in mind. Maybe when he earned enough credits in the future, he would be able to start making items from the shop. Once again, a knock was heard on his door. It was still early morning, but he had been expecting this. Not knowing who the smell was coming from meant it was them. After opening the door, 3 soldiers dressed in slick black uniforms stood there, tall and strong. "Quinn Talon, correct?" "Yes, sir." "An emergency matter involving Peter Chuck has caused him to drop out of the tournament. Due to this, the substitute for Dell's class, Quinn Talon, must participate. Please follow us." After a quick elevator ride down, they had finally arrived at the underground area. Unlike above, the students here were already awake and were practicing for the events. Still, many of them had nerves as it was only the second day. Before being able to join them, Quinn was further taken to a separate area where a desk and what looked like a small office area had been set up. Behind the desk, equipment was there for participants to use, as well as other things such as snacks and beverages. There were also many soldiers standing on guard, keeping an eye on everyone. The tension was high between the participants, and this often caused things to heat up between them. The soldiers didn't mind a bit of back and forth between students, but the second there was fighting, they would stop it. Fights were to be displayed in the arena, not down below where nobody could see. The reason for bringing Quinn to the desk was that he needed to be registered. They handed him over a tablet where he was to input his fighting name. "Oh, crap, I didn't even think of this. I can't use my gamer ID, as Peter did. Even if I'm using my shadow powers, I won't be using my blood powers." He struggled to come up with a name, but finally managed to put one down. The man at the desk looked at the tablet and chuckled before handing it over to one of the other soldiers. "You're free to use the training area as you wish. You will be called later on in the day, and your room number, if you want to rest, is 23, or if you manage to make it through." The man then paused for a second. He looked at Quinn's wristwatch and realized that it said level 1. He shook his head in disbelief, not understanding what this class was thinking. Sure, the last student was a level 1, but they were clearly a special case, and the others could even see that due to the guards always being around them. "Don't worry about it and do what you want until we call you," the man said as he wafted his hand, suggesting Quinn go away. Was my name that bad? Is that why he was laughing? Quinn thought. Looking around, there wasn't much for him to do. Since the first round of fights had already been completed, the others knew what powers they had. This meant that the training hall was full of people using their powers. They would still keep their moves hidden, but they were able to practice a lot better than before. But for Quinn, he still wanted to keep his powers hidden until the fight. Instead of fighting himself, he decided to lean up against the wall and keep an eye out on all the others. One of these in the room would be fighting. He had been there for a good 5 minutes, and when leaning up against the wall, another person jumped in to join him, one that was quite large and had a square-looking head. The two said nothing to each other as they looked at all the participants. The person who was also up against the wall was Nate. The whole night, Sam had been excited after finding out that Zombie P would be in the fighting event. It was a shame that the Bloody Volver didn't turn out to be Larry, but he was excited to fight Zombie P. However, as soon as he entered the room, he looked and looked, but couldn't see Peter anywhere. He stood out more than the others, and he wasn't the only one that had noticed this. Peter was now well known to everyone. He was the kid who always had 2 guards beside him, and it also turned out he had an amazing regenerative ability. For him to suddenly disappear, they all could tell straight away. Noticing this, Nate knew that there had to be a replacement. He decided to look from the wall at all the participants taking part, in order to get a better look at everyone. From the first day, he kept an eye on everyone as he went about looking for Larry. There were far few people today, but still, he couldn't see anyone new practicing. Where's the replacement? Suddenly, a large slash of air came out of nowhere. It was hard to see, but one could feel it if one's senses were sharp enough. Nate, noticing this, turned to his side as he moved. At the same moment, he saw another student that had been on the wall with him the whole time. "Hey, move!" Nate shouted. But Quinn didn't listen. He too could sense the wind, and instead decided to stay still. He knew that the attack wasn't going to hit him. The attack slammed into the wall, making a small bang as it hit, like the end of a whip. However, there was no marking on the wall, for it was made of glathrium. "Oh, sorry, that almost hit you. Are you okay?" a student said, running over. "Be careful next time," Nate shouted back. "How stupid and bad could you be? This room is massive, and you managed to make a stray attack come over here." He was annoyed. The student continued to apologize, but a few others behind him were also looking over. "It was no accident," Quinn mumbled as he finally left the wall and started to walk over towards the student. He had overheard the student speaking the whole time. They could see that Nate and Quinn were standing there by the wall and wanted to give them a little scare. When the attack came towards Quinn, he knew that they had aimed precisely in the middle of the two of them, and there was no need for him to move. All they wanted to do was scare them. After all, if he or Nate were hurt, the students would have gotten into trouble. Looking over in the student's direction from where the attack had come from, he could also see a bunch of girls off to the side, and something clicked in his head. It wasn't an accident. If I know thirsty boys, those guys were trying to impress those girls. As Nate saw the curly-haired student walk towards the boy, he was wondering what was going to happen. "Wait, is that the new guy? It has to be. I don't remember seeing him down here." Looking at his wristwatch, he could see the level 1, but something else had worried him even more. He could see the student clenching his fist, ready for a punch. Back on the top platform, the students were starting to gather in front of the screens for the first events to start. The others had left the hotel together and were now peacefully sitting in front of screen 2. Just then, Sam had arrived from his hotel, as he had agreed to meet up with them yesterday. "Hey, where's Quinn?" Sam asked, noticing he wasn't sitting down with them. "Well," Vorden replied, "he's taking part in the fighting tournament." The drink Sam held nearly dropped to the floor, but he quickly tightened his grip, and then a small smile appeared on his face. "Oh. I don't know why fate has decided to put you on the battlefield. All I know is everyone might be in for one hell of a surprise," Sam thought. Quinn leaned against the wall while looking at the students, with several thoughts bombarding his head. The energy from before and his strong heartbeat hadn't settled down. Every second meant the fight he was about to participate in was getting closer and closer. This whole event reminded him of the past, life before the book, how he was too weak before. He was too weak to help Peter. He was too weak to help himself. How the other students used to beat him every day, and the most he could do was get a hit here or there. He was thinking about how much he hated his life back then every single day, how the school chose to do nothing because he wasn't destined for great things. And again, when arriving at the military base, how they started to target those around him. All these bad memories were making him angrier. At that moment, when he was walking, the picture of him getting hit and beaten by these losers was playing in his head. Hearing the students behind him laughing and saying what they had said, he already had enough of this. He couldn't do anything back then, but he could now. Seeing Quinn's fist tightening, Nate could tell that was about to happen straight away. Although the kids deserved to get hit, Nate didn't want the new student to be punished for it. He would be the aggressor in this situation if his punch landed. However, there was also a second reason Nate wanted to stop a fight. The people he was walking to were level 7s. There weren't many weak people left in the fighting event. If a fight was to happen, he couldn't see Quinn coming out of it unharmed. "Hey, is he coming over to us?" "What does he think he's doing?" one of the students from behind said. The student in front was also annoyed. Although he had thrown out the wind strike, he was only trying to have a little fun. He knew the attack wouldn't hit them, so he felt like there was no reason for anyone to get angry. "What the hell, you brat? What are you getting so annoyed about when I already said I was sorry?" the student complained. "I'm in no mood for games. Out of all the days to try to pull this, today is not that day," Quinn said. "Of course it's my fault, right? It's always the fault of the weak ones for being born this way." The sound of Quinn's voice, he wasn't sure if he was imagining it, but there was certainly some type of undertone when he was speaking. The student looked around to see if his friends behind him had heard, or if it was just him. They continued to laugh and joke around, and even gave a thumbs up towards him. "They didn't hear that? Am I going crazy?" the student thought. Out of panic and desperation, he threw a wind slash. Quickly, Quinn moved his body to the side and started walking forward again. To the student in front of him, it looked like the attack had just gone right through his body. Now the student was starting to feel his palms sweat. He threw out another attack, and once again, ever so slightly, Quinn would place his foot, allowing him to avoid the attack and go back into position. The movement was so small it could hardly be seen. The outsiders who were watching such a thing were confused. All they could see was one student walking forward, while the other was walking back in the middle of the room. The student who was throwing out the wind blades was using a unique technique. When wind users use such an attack, usually a thin white line can be seen striking the air. But the wind user's attack was invisible to the eye and could only be felt. "What's Josh doing?" the student said. "Is he pretending to attack? I knew he was too soft. He thinks he can bluff his way out." However, a few moments later, a large whip-like sound could be heard as the wind attacks reached the end of how far they could go. The loud banging noise was continuously heard, and now the others were in shock. Josh wasn't moving his hands about. He was throwing out attacks. The loud noise had managed to attract the attention of the small pop-up office from earlier. "What is going on over there?" the man at the desk said, scratching his head. As he looked over, he could see the new student. "I thought something like this might happen. Stop this before it gets out of hand," the man ordered. A soldier from the post was immediately on his way. Seeing the soldier come over, Nate breathed a sigh of relief. He was hesitating whether to get involved or not, but was afraid he could have been hurt by the wind users. It wasn't easy to sense those attacks. Nate believed that the student had thrown out those attacks and had missed on purpose, trying to scare the student away. The two were now close enough, and Quinn dashed forward. Josh lifted his hand, ready to throw another wind strike right at the student. The soldier who was on his way could see this. If that attack hits, the other might be seriously hurt, the soldier thought, and he too had dashed forward. What they didn't expect was what Quinn did next. He lifted his leg fast up towards his head and then slammed it down, performing an axe kick right on the student's wrist. Josh's hand slammed down and was pinned against the floor. Josh tried to move, but even using his whole strength, he couldn't budge. If he tried any harder, he was afraid his wrist would break if it wasn't already broken. After the axe kick had been performed, Quinn threw out his fist. There was no hammer strike. There was no blood spray. It was just an ordinary punch, but it did contain his full strength behind it. As the punch went forward, a man stood in the way and braced himself, holding both his arms in a cross shape. "That's it? Just a little weak punch?" The students around started to laugh. The blow had hit the man, but he remained there solid and still, not having moved an inch, and the expression on his face hadn't changed at all. "Come on, Josh, you could have taken the punch and hit him back." The students continued to mock their friend. "Stop this at once," the man said. "Fighting is reserved for the arena and not underground. If you continue, then you shall be punished." When Quinn looked at who he had hit, he noticed it was one of the soldiers. He then peeked around the soldier to see the student behind him, grabbing his wrist. It looked like it was starting to swell. "It's okay, I think he learned his lesson," Quinn said as he walked off. "Wait!" the soldier shouted. "Young boy, who's your teacher?" You mean Dell? Quinn replied. No, not your homeroom teacher. That Kick. You're in the beast weapons class, yes? My teacher is Sergeant Leo, Quinn replied as he walked off. The soldier said no more and allowed Quinn to walk away. Wait, you're going to let him go? Josh cried. Look at my wrist. I think he broke it. Stop your complaining. Something like this can easily be fixed by the doctors before your event, and don't think I didn't see where you had planned to use your strike. In my eyes, this was a simple act of self-defense. The soldier's decision was final, and Josh could see that. There was no more use in complaining, and he wouldn't try bothering Quinn again. After the fight had been broken up, Quinn went back to the wall to relax once again. Nate came rushing over with a glow in his eyes. He had seen something quite impressive. Hey, that kick was impressive. You must have practiced a lot to get it that smooth and fast. Nate was a junkie for martial arts. Even before learning what type of ability he had, he preferred the pure skill people would use in hand-to-hand combat. The fact that it also helped him out with his ability was only a bonus. If you want, maybe we can spar sometime? Nate asked, then looked down at his watch, which made him add a few last words. Without abilities, of course. Quinn could see that the student was a nice person. He didn't look threatening at all, even if he did seem a bit annoying. Sure, it sounds fun. Back at the pop-up office, the soldier had returned to make a report of the events that had occurred. Anything to report? The man at the desk asked. A broken wrist, nothing else. They won't fight again, I'm sure of it. The man at the desk paused for a second as he looked at the soldier before speaking again. Go back to your duties. You're dismissed. Oh, and before you go, make sure to see a doctor about your broken arm. Yes, sir, the soldier said as he rushed off. This is an announcement. All students get into their designated groups. The main events will begin shortly.
Hi, Quinn here. Wondering what happens next? If you want to jump the queue and unleash all episodes, click on the link here and install the Pocket FM app.